All right, so the purpose of our Q&A sessions are to address questions related to the ARP-ESSER requirements and allowable uses, and to provide LEAs information today. In particular, we're going to focus on the district ARP-ESSER plan, which is due by August 24th. So we're going to have this session kind of built into two parts. Part one, we're going to answer some questions that we've received that are frequently asked questions and address those first. And then part two, we'll be taking any live questions that all of you might have. Please do use the chat feature throughout the session to ask any clarifying questions about the responses we are providing or to raise additional questions. This will also help us, you guys, because is recorded. There may be questions that you're asking that other folks will be have similar questions about, that then this recording is posted and that they can see them as well. So please do be using that chat feature. So before we dig in today, I do want to introduce you to the staff here at the OPI that are with us. So I'll start first. I am the Senior Manager of School Improvement and Innovation, and my name is Julie Mergel. Jeff?
Hi. I'm Jeff Kirksey. I am a ESSER program manager.
Hi, I'm Mindy. Hi, I'm Mindy Askelson. I am the program analyst for ESSER and EANS.
Tracy?
Good morning, everyone. I am Tracy Mosman, Chief Program Officer here at the Office of Public Instruction. Welcome.
And Chris.
Hi, good morning. Chris Averill, I'm the Communications Director at the OPI.
Thank you. And as you guys can see, we've got lots of folks here at the OPI who are helping us as we're rolling out ARP-ESSER from our finance and for our program teams as well. So a couple of key dates before we jump into the session overall. Like I had mentioned at the very beginning, this is our final Q&A session related to ARP-ESSER. And then I did put this up here just as a reminder, but last week on June 24th, districts were to make publicly available on their websites the return to in-person instruction and continuity of service plan. So we won't be really addressing anything with that plan today because that was due last Thursday. And then tomorrow, was it tomorrow? I guess it would be Thursday, not tomorrow. We got one more day. The district ARP-ESSER template will be opening up through Teams. So we'll be taking and kind of reviewing a little bit of that today as well, though. Then in July, starting on Tuesdays, on the 13th, we're going to be hosting some webinars to assist districts in developing and submitting the district ARP-ESSER plans. We will have on August 3rd through 5th a special regional summit for our schools that have been designated as comprehensive. And that'll be a time for them to bring their leadership teams together to really be thinking about how to coordinate all of these funding efforts with their school improvement, their title, and ARP-ESSER to really be sure that they have one plan that they're really able to focus on. And then August 24th, that's the date by which the districts must submit the ARP-ESSER plan on the OPI template through Teams. September 1st is the deadline by which the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 Egrants applications are due in the Egrants system. And so those are separate from this template that is due in Teams. And that is due on the 1st. That'll be the time at which then if you are wanting to make any changes, it'll move into the amendment phase. So let's just talk really quickly about ESSER. ESSER, really, we've had 3 rounds of funding come through. One was with ESSER 1 through the CARES Act, which was in March of 20. Then the second with ESSER 2, which was in December of 20. And then the third round of funding, which is ESSER 3, which came through in March of 2021. Please do note that the emergency assistance for non-public schools is a separate set of funding. In ESSER 1, that was part of through Title I originally, and then that stopped in ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. So that's a separate set of funding that started then with ESSER 2. A couple of things there I think also important to note is that right now with ESSER 3, we only have 2/3 of the funding so far. The remaining 1/3 will not be allocated until the state plan has been approved by the Department of Education. That was submitted on June 7th and we await their response. And as soon as they approve that, then the remaining 1/3 will be pushed out. Just as we jump in, as a couple of friendly reminders about the Q&A details about this session. The requirements of the ARPAC relating to these funds are published in the Federal Register, and the department has put out a frequently asked question document that can be found on our website and on the department's website. It's a pretty dense document that has a lot of details about the allowable uses of these ARP-ESSER funds. We've also developed a frequently asked question document that you can find on our website that also has information about our ESSER eligibility, grant requirements, and all of the components that go with it. I do want to note a disclaimer here that the contents of our information today do not have the force or effect of law and are not meant to bind the public in any way. The information is subject to change as additional information is released from the department. For example, we still have not received final word yet on all the reporting details of what they're going to be requiring from the department for us to be reporting up to them. So sometimes it is a moving target. And as we get more information, we're working to share that in real time with you as quickly as we can. So our session today, we're going to narrow in on 3 particular key topics. We're going to talk about details about the school district ARP-ESSER plans. We're going to add some details about e-grant application, some technical pieces just to be sure we got some clarity there. And then Jeff really wants to spend some time coming back to some construction capital cost pre-approval information. That is one piece that we have been receiving more clarity and more information as time has moved forward. And that seems to be an area where we did receive a lot of questions this last week were around that pre-approval process. So we want to take time to do that again. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. I'll read the questions and allow Jeff to answer on this first part, and then we'll take all of your questions in the second part of our session today. So I'm going to start with you, Jeff. Question: what is the timeline for ESSER 3 submission?
All right, well, there are 3 key dates to remember. The first we mentioned briefly is that June 24th deadline, and that was when districts needed to make publicly available their return to in-person instruction and continuity of service plan, either by posting that on their website, or if they don't have a website, they were coordinating with me and we would agree on a public distribution plan. So on August 24th, the districts must submit the uniform ARP-ESSER template to OPI through Teams. The district ARP-ESSER plan template will open on July 1st, and we're actually going to preview it here today, and close on August 24th in Teams. And then finally, September 1st is the due date to submit both your ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 applications in Egrants. You don't have to wait until September 1st, but that is when they need to be complete.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Is the OPI providing a template for the district ARP-ESSER plan?
Yes, and the reason we are is because we're requiring districts to use a uniform template. LEAs must submit an ARP-ESSER plan to OPI through the Teams scheduling system, and the district ARP-ESSER plan template will open on the 1st of July and close on August 24th. We'll continue to release information on our website under the ESSER information page, which I linked above in the chat, so that you can begin work on the application even now before the template opens next week. Or this week. It's this week. Man, this week, month is sailed.
That's good. Jeff, who should complete the district ARP-ESSER plan?
Yeah, so due to the LE plan needing to be completed with stakeholder input, district programming goals, use of data, including subgroup data, and selection of evidence-based practices. We highly recommend that the plan be completed by an administrator who can address these components.
Unknown caller.
Oh my goodness.
Really?
Sorry, you guys. How do I get access to Teams?
So the LEA authorized representative must submit this form linked here to the Office of Public Instruction to set up initial user accounts on Teams. So this is if you don't already have this access. Assign or reassign roles to individuals who will access the team system on behalf of the LEA, or inactivate a user's account on Teams. The LEA authorized representative is responsible for authorizing security access and roles to users of the team system. The AR may submit this form by email to opiteams@mt.gov.
Thanks, Jeff. And I will put that link in the chat here in a few minutes. But yes, so we will need to be sure that districts representatives do have access so that they can complete this form in Teams. Will there be special reporting requirements for ARP ESSER 3 grants?
It's likely. The USED has not yet released the reporting requirements. However, LEA should expect reporting on the use of funds from USED, OPI, or both. This is one of the key reasons for the uniform template for the LEA ARP ESSER plan.
Jeff, why am I only seeing 2/3 of my ESSER 3 allocation in eGrants?
Yes, if I had a nickel for every time I got this question, so I'd have several nickels. So Montana has only received 2/3 of the ESSER funds from the Department of Ed to date. Once the remaining third is allocated to the state from the department, we will adjust the allocations, and then you will do a budget amendment to spend the rest of the funds. We expect to receive the final third after the state ESSER 3 plan is approved. As Julie mentioned earlier, that was submitted on the 7th of June, and we are just awaiting for the feds to approve it.
All right, so Jeff, we're going to take some time to answer some questions about the district ARP ESSER plan. And so what I thought I'd do is actually show you guys a working version right now. We do have some final edits that we'll be making between now and the 1st, but I'm going to give just kind of a preview and walk through it so folks can get a sense of this template of what to anticipate and what it'll look like. We'll also be including a version of it on our webpage so that people have like a working document, so that they have something they can be sharing, they can be working towards thinking about before they actually go to submit the master plan, if you will, in the Teams report. So I'm just going to close this off for a second and pull that up, if you will. Do you want to check the chat and see if there's any questions while I'm doing that maybe we can answer as I pull that up?
I think we're good so far, but those of you joining us, feel free to answer or ask your questions at any time using the chat function. I will just clarify too. There are a number of us that you can reach out to here at OPI for questions. General allowable use questions, any questions you have about the status of your eGrants application, all of that can be directed to me. If you are having a difficult time navigating eGrants and need some expertise there, my colleague Mindy, who's also dropped her contact in the box, she is your go-to gal. So.
All right, so Jeff, I just want to kind of share this. Are you able to see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, so you guys, there's some weird language on here because it's actually coming from the template. So some of these things won't actually show up on the real template, but it's just here in the kind of as default language that's behind the screens, if you will. So it's kind of built you guys into a couple of different sections here, 8 of them. And so there are screens for each of these 8 sections. So it starts with the district priorities, goes through meaningful consultation, goals about coordinating funds, a component around creating safe and healthy learning environment. The 6th one around addressing lost instructional time. There's a component on supporting the educator workforce. And then the final one is around monitoring implementation. So we'll kind of take a look at those here, but that's kind of the different components, if you will. We are recommending that before folks kind of dive in and start answering these questions, that they kind of do that pre-planning component to really be thinking about how do they identify those priorities? What forms of data do they already have that they could start to do some gap analysis? Have they done a needs assessment before? How are they engaging in some of the meaningful consultation and really kind of doing some of that pre-work and recommending that. So we will be providing on our webpage resources and tools to support districts with that, just so that they have some of those tools to be thinking about how to respond, if you will, to all of these sections, so that when they get here, they've got that pre-work done and it'll go pretty quickly. So that would be our recommendation to our school systems. We did outline here up front just some reminders about allowable uses so that they know where they can go. Districts can to answer any questions that they might have as they start to think about the programming pieces in here. And so a couple of things about the way that this template is set up. It'll be a master that needs to be finalized and submitted on August 21st by one person. Multiple people can't have access to the same template and be responding to it, which is why we're recommending you use kind of the working document to gather all of that information. You can go in multiple times and be working on it and close out and it'll save. It's just that you don't want to hit that submit button until it's all complete, because once you hit that submit button, it's coming up to us, and then you would have to reopen it back to you. So we're just really encouraging folks to kind of be working on it, responding to it, and then knowing that one person is going to be the one that does the final submission, and really not to do that final submission until the very, very end. We would encourage you to work on this PDF document as kind of the download form before you actually go to that place. So it'll ask you guys some general questions up front about, you know, what county is this? What district is this? Who are you? Who's responding to this? What's your email address? And what's your phone number? Just kind of that basic information up front so that we know who's completing this. And then it starts going into each of the sections. So the first section is going to ask our districts to identify what are your top 2 to 3 needs that you've found that are most pressing for your students in schools as a result of the pandemic. So you'll just fill in 1, 2, 3, our top 3 priorities. It's similar, we did this for the state, and in the state plan, our top 3 priorities were, the first one was mental health and wellness, our second one was social and emotional learning, and our third one was around addressing some of the academic impact and how to really accelerate learning. So those were the 3 state. Now we recognize that each district may have different priorities. So how are you going to, you know, think about this? And then just list the data sources that you use to identify what they were. There's a checkbox here. You'll find a lot of check boxes throughout this template to kind of just really ease that. So the first set is about the student groups and specifically identifying who was disproportionately affected in your district due to COVID. And so there's a checkbox there that those can be selected and choose all that apply. So then we move into the second component, which is around meaningful consultation. That's a really key important piece about the ARP ESSER plan, is that it does require the meaningful consultation to occur. So we're just asking here, who did you reach out to? Who were your key stakeholder groups that were consulted and approached about this particular topic, and then what methods did you use to do that? So it's just select them for both of those questions. Then there's a question that comes at the end, and we're asking this throughout the template. You'll see it keep coming back. But the idea is, have you engaged in any creative or any innovative methods within each section? So for this one, for meaningful consultation, that you would like to share that are best practices with the state or other entities that maybe then we can share out with other school districts as we continue through the next 3 years with this. That'll be a box that's optional to complete. You don't have to, but we're trying to really think about how do we start moving forward and really creating that sense of stronger and really innovation, and not really just returning back to what will be norm. And so that's how we're kind of encouraging some of that thinking. So then the next section comes into the goal action plan. And so what we're trying to do here, you guys, is really be sure that we're addressing all of the components of other plans in the hopes that maybe our districts can just complete one plan. We know, for example, like our comprehensive schools have a continuous school improvement plan, they have a improvement action plan, and now we'll have an ARP-ESSER plan. And so we tried to really go out and say, where's that overlap of where we're asking the same question to our districts multiple times, and is there a way we can put it in here so that we could go to the Board of Public Ed and say, is it possible that this plan could potentially also fit the role of the continuous school improvement plan, or the CSIP, if you will. So it's taken that exact piece, kind of that thinking from the CSIP and kind of put it in here to say, okay, what do you have for a math goal? What do you have for an ELA goal? And what do you have for another goal? And then identifying, over here it's cut off, but identifying the strategies and the timeline and who's responsible for those action steps. So you'll see a place here to input what the math goal is and the strategies, the ELA goal, and then another goal of selection by the district based upon those priorities and needs, really. You know, is it about mental health? Is it graduation rates? Is it about, you know, professional development, community and family engagement? Then we took those and said, okay, for which of those above goals were there any student groups that there's a distinct math goal for? If so, who were they? And was there one for the ELA? And then just kind of identify if you did have a particular subgroup math goal or a subgroup ELA goal or other goal, and provide that there. The next part, you guys, we're moving through on the next section, which is on coordinating funds. So this is just a question to say, have you considered how you're braiding other funding sources? Yes or no? And if so, how are you coordinating those funds? So are you using ARP with, you know, some Title I Part A? Are you using ARP with some Title I Part A school improvement dollars and with Carl's Perkins? So it's just kind of getting that idea out there to be thinking about how do you align and braid these funding sources to really impact programming to meet the priority needs that you've identified. All right, I'm talking a lot. I'm hoping there's some questions though. So creating safe and healthy learning environments is the next section. So the question here is, if you're planning to use any of your funds for prevention or mitigation strategies, to please select the evidence-based practice below or provide it in other. We've gone through and looked for some evidence-based strategies based upon the tiers and provided some here, but certainly these are not required. They're just some options for districts to consider, but there's an other box here as well. Moving to the next one, if you're planning to develop or use any approaches that are novel or innovative to implement prevention and mitigation strategies and are willing to share, we'd love for folks to share what those might be. So that's the fourth component there. Moving into the next one on addressing instructional lost time. This is another really critical piece about the ARP-ESSER funds, is that 20% of the funds must be used to address lost instructional time. And so this piece is a requirement. That 20% set aside, we're asking which of the evidence-based practices that you're using. Here's some options in these drop-down menus. Again, you know, it might be 2 that you're using. It might be 1. It might not be any of these, and you're going to select one from other. But again, the idea is to say, what are you using for that 20% set aside? Then it goes to the opposite, right? So what are you going to use the 80% allowable uses for? And provides a list here of evidence-based practices as well, and then other. It says if you're planning, again, you guys to use any innovative approaches and you'd like to share that, please do. We do know with ARP ESSER that there are 4 different tiers. There's the strong, promising, strong, moderate, promising, and then the 4th level. There is ability to use that 4th level if you're thinking about ways in which, you know, you're starting to build some evidence that is aligned with some research best practice. That is allowable if it's not already identified as one of the top 3 tiers. Just wanted to make that note. All right. We are down to 2 more sections. Supporting the educator workforce. This is a new piece within the ARP that has been emphasized. And so the question is just, are you going to use any of your ARP funds to support and stabilize educator workforce? How do you plan if you're planning to do so? And then some questions that we're anticipating may be coming for reporting purposes, but are just like provide the estimated number of jobs that have been created or retained as a result of use of ARP ESSER funds. And then again, that innovation question. So it's not you have to, it's just if you are, what are you using it for? And what's the impact of that? Final section is on monitoring and measuring. It's just asking how are you as districts going to monitor the impact of the ESSER funds and interventions of that 20% set aside, and then how are you going to collect that data in what way? We've listed ideas here, but there certainly could be other. And then the final says, you know, once you've submitted your responses, you are going to want to download a PDF so you have a copy of your responses so you can upload that into the district website. And we'll be taking a look at these and providing back, you know, a response to say thank you. We're taking a look at it and seeing if it's allowable uses, what are we finding, and what do we see happening across our state. We will take, you guys, just so you know, we're going to be taking these responses and filtering them into permanently, if you will, into a team screen so that districts can go in at any point in time and really update them, because they are required to update them every 6 months. And so they'll be available, but it'll take us a little bit of time to get that migrated over there. But once it's there, then we'll be ready to go. Probably we're anticipating around September sometime. So I just wanted to share that with you, that this template's in there. It starts off in Teams. You're going to get click a link. It's going to take you in there. And again, you can come back and forth as long as you don't submit. So I do want to, Jeff, just pause for a moment and answer any questions that anyone might have about this template at this time.
Yeah, any questions that you have so far? I think one thing to let you know, like you can kind of borrow back and forth between the various processes that you're doing. So as you're completing your Egrants application, you can pull content that you've submitted in your ESSER art plan over into Egrants and vice versa. Like, just be aware that you don't have to create new content every time. If you've already created that content, by all means, copy and paste it over. I think specifically when you're working on your ESSER plan and you're outlining how you're going to be using funds and what those funds are going to be used for, that's a great description for the fund category in eGrants when you're looking to describe your funds.
Thanks, Jeff. So we'll be putting more information out there on the web this Thursday, and more information coming to you to really kind of look at that plan. And then again, we'll be opening sessions on the 13th of July and just really trying to be support to our districts as they start to work on this process and complete this process. I'm going to go, Jeff, back to our screen. Is it back up on eGrants? I just want to check.
It is, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is going to be a hard left turn here, you guys. Moving out of that ARP ESSER fund template over to Egrants, even though they're related. So some technical questions for Egrants. Jeff, if we currently do not have an authorized representative onboarded, how do we submit the ESSER 2 and 3 eGrant applications?
Yeah, and we know lots of schools right now are in transition with superintendents, principals, clerks, and all of that. And so you can complete the request for a new authorized representative using the link found on the contact information tab in the eGrant application. If you serve as both the business official and authorized representative prior to completing the form, please reach out to my friend Mindy Askelson at mt.gov or at 444-0768. And she has dropped her contact, her information in the chat a couple different times for you to find.
Jeff, how do I find the budget tab for each funding stream in Egrants? It's hiding from me.
It is, yes. So you'll see a little box at the top of your screen. It usually starts with either ESSER Consolidated or ESSER 3 Consolidated. That is actually a drop-down box. Click on that and you will see all the different budget categories.
If my eGrants application has been returned, how do I view the comments and suggested revisions?
Yeah, you'll do that just by reviewing your application and clicking on review checklist. If you do not see comments and feedback at that point, that likely means that you have a pop-up blocker working on your web browser. So you'll want to disable that web browser and then refresh the page, and you should be able to see my comments.
All right, Jeff, we're going to now transition into some of the questions that you've been receiving, in particular around construction and capital pre-approval requests. So what capital costs must be pre-approved?
Yeah, so the ESSER funds that are being used for capital expenditures and construction do need pre-approval from the state. So if your planned ESSER funded capital expenditures meet or exceed these state asset thresholds, as you can see in the table here, and these shouldn't be new to you, you will need pre-approval. Items less than these thresholds still must meet allowable use criteria.
How does an LEA request pre-approval of construction costs from the OPI?
Yes. So the LEA needs to submit the capital expenditure pre-approval form in Egrants, and we'll walk you through that in just a second. It's a simple Google form that includes a review of federal requirements and district-specific content.
Where can I find the ESSER capital expenditure pre-approval form?
Yes, so you can either access it directly at this link, or if you are in Egrants, if you go to whatever budget you're working on, if you go to the subcategory, the object code 700, you'll see right at the top of the page, there is a link to the ESSER capital expenditure pre-approval form.
What are the primary elements of the pre-approval form?
Yeah, so there are really two major components. One is a review of all the federal guidance regarding use of federal grant dollars for construction or capital improvement processes. This is pretty standard language. I think, and as I've been working with districts, districts are pretty well aware about Davis-Bacon prevailing wage provisions. They're aware of insurance requirements. They sometimes need to be reminded that these funds do have an overall purpose to prevent, prepare for, or respond to COVID. So that connection always has to be made with any request that's coming from these funds. And I think that the piece that's been the most daunting is the additional Department of Education requirements for capital and construction. There are 8 listed as checkboxes. One thing to keep in mind, though, is while you do have to check every box to acknowledge that that requirement exists, that doesn't mean it applies to you. In fact, we learned just about a week and a half ago, we learned from the Department of Ed that actually they don't anticipate any uses of ESSER dollars to actually have to complete an environmental impact assessment. In fact, that's while that is a requirement, that tends to be for large scale federal projects. So it is in their guidance, but it generally will not apply to most ESSER uses. Another one that may or may not apply to you is the second checkbox in that list of 8, is if your building or site is on the registry of historic places, there may be additional requirements. But if that doesn't apply to you, just check the box acknowledging its existence and don't worry about that moving forward. So, all right, we can go to the next slide, Julie. So, yeah, so, and then one more piece of federal requirement, you do have to state your preferred disposition of property and equipment when the grant terms end, or in the event the property or equipment is no longer needed. You can either wish to retain that without any further obligation, or you can reassign it to another federal grant program, or you can liquidate it and return those funds to the federal government. I bet you can guess which one most folks are checking, but you do have some options. And then there on out is in the pre-approval form is really a chance for you to describe the project that you're doing, make those strong connections to COVID prevention response or preparation, chance to articulate the budget for the project. And this doesn't have to be a precise budget. In fact, many folks are actually doing their budgets before they've actually gotten bids, so it can be a ballpark. You can always tighten that back up in Egrants with budget amendments, but for the purposes of pre-approval, we just need to get a ballpark number. And then we ask if you required meaningful stakeholder input. That's particularly important for ESSER 3 fund usage. And then we ask that if your expenditure is over $50,000, that you let us know that you have board approval. And typically that's links to board minutes, or you can directly copy and paste that section from minutes into that box. And then a final understanding, and then you submit. So.
All right, Jeff, that is all of the frequently asked questions that we have for everyone today in part 1. So we do want to open the floor for any questions that anyone might have there. I'm going to check the chat box, but certainly do encourage anyone to take their mic off mute and ask a question.
You know, one thing I'll add while you all are thinking or writing your questions in the chat, as we just kind of left the pre-approval section, a lot of folks have been asking, well, how do we know once our pre-approval has been accepted? And I am reviewing pre-approvals at the same time that I am reviewing your Egrants application. And so once everything looks in order in your pre-approval form, then I go ahead and I approve your Egrants application. And once that Egrants application is approved, you are free to draw on those funds. Now we will be sending along an official communication that you can have on file for your auditor that that you'll get a letter either emailed a PDF or mailed a hard copy letter from me just stating that your pre-approval was approved.
All right, so we have information on our website. You can locate it here at opi.mt.gov under the Find ESSER Information. When you click that tab, you'll see lots of drop-down options for excuse
Bless
me
you.
for guidance, and that's where we're going to be putting a lot of information out here in the next couple of days for the template for the ARP ESSER plan. So that's where you can go for a lot of information that we're providing online. And again, we look forward to our sessions in July as we begin to kind of dig in and think about what questions folks might be having, just really being available and assisting in developing and submitting these district ARP ESSER plans. A recording of this session will be available on our webpage later today, no later than tomorrow. And we'll also be posting the slideshow as well, so that if you have questions, it'll be there. And no later than July 1st, which is just Thursday, we'll have information about the template and have it open for all of our district and teams. That's all that we have for you here today at the Montana Office of Public Instruction, and just want to wish each and every one of you a happy 4th of July as you head into the weekend.
Julie, I'm sorry, there was a question in the chat box about, can you just reiterate when and where folks can go to access that LEA template on July 1st?
Yes. So it'll be in Teams, Tracy, and so we'll be providing that link, and then they'll go in there and they can get it. But if they don't have access to Teams already, then they're going to have to send an email to OPI to get that access set up. So I will drop that right over there in just a second, if you will.
And we will be posting a working copy of the plan on the website that you can download and share and kind of collaborate with outside of Teams, so that you can nail that all down and finalize it before you enter it in Teams.
Tracy, did that answer the question?
Yes, it sure did. Thanks, Julie.
Perfect. Ooh, well, that was interesting. Sorry, you guys. Or with an extra O. This is the link to the form if you currently do not have access for Teams, or somebody, the authorized representative needs to assign someone to it. This is the form that needs to be filled out, and it needs to be emailed to OPI Teams at mt.gov, and that's the same location. If you're having any difficulty at all of accessing that and getting in, can certainly send us an email there, and we will help you be sure that you can get an account and get access and complete the form, so that you can then go ahead and begin that process. And you could even do that now before Thursday if needed. You could reach out if you need access or don't have access. And then, as Jeff said, we'll be posting on our website that working document, if you will, so you can see it in PDF form even before it goes in, before you want to work in Teams. All right, I think that's all we have for you. We're 15 minutes before our time, which is great. And again, I just do want to wish each and every one of you a happy 4th of July. Take care. You know where to reach us. You can reach Jeff at his email there, and his phone number is there as well. Thank you guys so much.
All right, thank you.